In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make a finishing plate like this. You'll be able to add these pads to it. This is the bottom, it's got a grippy surface, or if you're trying to finish something, you can flip it over and lay your work on top of it. To get started, you're going to want to have a 24.5 by 24.5 piece of plywood. You're going to start off with a thin strip of wood, and it really doesn't matter how wide it is. The nail on my awl is 1/8 of an inch, so I'm going to go ahead and drill 1/8 of an inch to start out. It doesn't really matter where we start, we're just going to start on the end. Now my nail fits in there, so that's good. Now we're going to take a yardstick. You want to try to make the tip so that's right in the center of the hole here. The first mark we make is going to be at 12 inches. Then we'll go to 9 3/8. And then we'll put a dot right at 6 inches. And another one at 2 7/8. At each one of these marks, I'm going to go ahead and use my awl. We'll go ahead to the end and we'll cut it off. So right about there. We'll drill each one of these holes out now with the 1/16 inch drill bit. We'll go ahead and mark where the pivot's going to be, which is this first one that we started with. Because I do want a 24-inch disc, I'm going to go ahead and start it here at the bottom. I'm going to measure over 24.5, and then I'll come to this side and I'll do 24.5. Now we'll go ahead and cross the diagonal at those two marks that we just made. We'll take our ruler and we'll slide it up so that the 12 1/4 inches meets up with the line. So here's my line here. If I slide it up, it's about right there, right at that spot. I've got this side of the ruler flush on the side, so that's my center right there. We'll use our awl again, and now we'll make 4 circles at each one of the points. Do the final one, which should be 24 inches in diameter. And there we go. We'll take our ruler again, and we're going to connect it to the point down here, and up to that center that we found, and we'll draw another line all the way through all 4 circles. We drew both of these lines. They're both perpendicular to each other, and we're going to put the point of our ruler right on that point. We'll take the ruler now, and we're going to find where 3 3/4 is, so right about there, and we're going to add another point. Then we'll take this ruler, we'll put it on that point, and again we'll go to 3 3/4, right where that line hits, which is right there. And when we get to the line that's perpendicular to the line that we started from, we plot this last line. It should be 3 3/4, which it is. And now we'll do the other 3 quadrants the exact same way we did the first quadrant. Now I'm going to come clean here. I went around and did all my 3 3/4 inch marks all the way around, and I found that I was not lining up at the very end. So I went back and measured my stick and found out that my stick was just a little bit too short. So I made another stick that's exactly 12 inches. As you can see, I was just a little too short when I went around with that first one. With this one, I got it to be about as close as I'm going to be able to get it, but I still came up a little short at the very end. This is where I started, and this is where I ended up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the distance in half and make my mark right there. I've got an awl mark here. I'll go ahead and add an awl mark there. And now this becomes my center line. This becomes what this is, and I just forget about these 2 sides. So this is the one I'm going to worry about right here. Altogether, you should have 22 marks. Now we're going to connect the dots that are parallel to each other all the way around. Again, it was a little bit off right here, so I'm going to draw my line on it, and then the point at the other side. And then again, all the way around, we're going to go exactly from one side to the other side and connect the dots. And when we're done, this is what we're left with. This might seem complicated the way that we went about doing this. I will have a pattern that you can download that you'll just basically cut it out and then piece it all together, and then you can bypass this as well as this next part where we're going to map these out. Speaking of mapping things out, I've made this little chart that you'll be able to download. It'll be on the left side of the screen, if you're on the website. And the way this is going to work is we're going to start at the very top and work our way down to the bottom. Each ring represents a number on the chart. The inside top one here equals the first, then second, third, the middle is the fourth, then you've got the fifth, sixth, seventh on this side. Each section also has its own letter. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. This would be the letter A here, so we're going to stop on J. We'll plot this kind of like a graph. If we're looking down at this, my letter A is here, and J is this line here. What I'll do is I'll look at the line A right here, and I'm going to look at the number over here. It shows I'm going to be making a mark on the second and sixth line. I am going to use a permanent marker because it's going to be drilled out, and I want to make sure that I know exactly where everything is. The line A says second and sixth. So I'm on line A here. This is number 1. That's number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 right here. And that is a common theme throughout this. You'll have the second and sixth one. The second one is first and fifth. So here's the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 right here. Line C, it's going to be the second and sixth. So 1, 2, follow this down. It's 4, 5, and 6. D is first here and the third one. 1, 2, 3, as well as the seventh one. 4, 5, 6, 7. Letter E is second and sixth. So 1 and 2. 6 would be right over here. F is first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. G is second and sixth. That's 1, 2, and then sixth is right over here. H is first, so 1, third, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. J, the final one, is going to be the first one, the fifth one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the seventh one, 6, 7. Right there. Now our pattern matches and we're ready to go. Again, I will make a printout so that you can just cut them all out and put them all together, and then you can just plot each one of the points without having to mark them like I'm doing here. The reason that I hesitate doing that is that printers are so inaccurate. It's difficult to get an exact match from one printer to the next. When I run things through my printer, I have to make sure that I got everything perfectly set, and I don't know how your printer is going to act. But if you do it with your printer, be careful to make sure that you're printing the full screen page, and some web browsers will they'll shrink it. It's at 90% instead of 100%, so you'll want to make sure it's at 100%. Now, looking over this, I did make a mistake, and I will fix it on the sheet that you can download. Letter B should be first, fifth, and seventh. So this is B, first, fifth, and seventh. I missed that last one over here, but it will be corrected on your sheet. Now I'm going to take my awl, and I'm going to hit each one of these intersections all along here with all the dots. And if your points came together differently in the center, we'll go ahead and hit the center where all these lines intersect. Now that we've got this all mapped out, we're going to make a jig. I've got a board here that's about 24 inches long, and it's 4 inches wide, but it doesn't need to be 4 inches wide. It just needs to be wide enough for our 2-inch Forstner bit, and it should be the thickness of the Forstner bit. So this Forstner bit is 3/4 of an inch. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood. My second piece is 8 inches long. You could probably do 6 inches and be all right. What I'll do now is find the center. So 24 inches long. 12 inches would be the center. I'll add a line across here. And then again, this is about 4 inches. So I'm going to go about 2 inches here. And that should be about my center. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of rounding this. And I'm going to take my awl, add that on the center. Now we'll take our 2-inch Forstner bit and we're going to drill out that hole. Now with that drilled out, we'll go ahead and add some glue to the other block. You want to try to not get glue in the center where the other hole is, but it doesn't really matter. Now we'll just place it over the hole. You can screw it in if you want, or just clamp it down. I think I'm just gonna clamp it. The advantage, of course, if you're screwing it, you don't have to wait for it to dry, but I'll give it some time to dry, and we'll come back. Now that this is dry, we'll go ahead and put this back on the drill press. We'll keep the same Forstner bit that we used earlier, the 2-inch, and we're just gonna press it down so that it makes a mark into the other piece of wood. And if I lift this up, you can see I've made a little divot. The next thing that we'll do is we're gonna find the diameter of our Forstner bit right above the actual cutter head. If we measure this, looks like we're about 0.588, which is pretty close to 5/8. So I'm gonna use a 5/8 Forstner bit. Now that it's done, we'll go ahead and stick it through the hole. And I've got a much more stable method of drilling straight holes into the top of this. Now we'll go ahead and push the Forstner bit so that the teeth are right on the outside. They're flush with the outside hole. I'll take a ruler now. I'm gonna find out exactly where 1/2 inch is, and it looks like it's about right there. Now what I'll do is I'll use a piece of tape as a depth gauge. I'm gonna put it right next to that line, make sure it's straight all the way around. And we'll know when we drill in, that once we hit that tape, that's where we need to stop. Now to use the jig, we'll take the point on the bottom and we're just gonna line it up with one of the points that we made with our awl. We'll add clamps to each side. So we wanna keep that right where it's at. Get to that point, I'll stop and I'll take it off and then remove the clamps. And we've got our first hole. Very simple. Of course, the only way to make this any more simple is if you do it on your drill press. You might not be able to reach these top holes, but you can certainly get probably up to here. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go around and get these outside holes, and then I'll use this jig to do the top. Now we'll go ahead and remove all the pencil on the top, as well as any kind of burrs that might have formed around the holes. This is 150 grit sandpaper. We don't want to go too deep when we sand, as it is plywood and the top layer is very thin, but we want to go enough that we're going to clean this all up. Now that I've drilled all these holes out on the top, I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill all the holes except for the center. I'll use an inch spade bit, and I'm going to drill out the center one now. It's probably a good idea that you clamp it down too. Now I've got a 3/8 flange here. I ground the actual part that was imprinted on the top of it. And with this flange, I've got an inch diameter on the top. That will fit right inside the center hole. This is upside down. Now I'm going to use epoxy on the top here. I've got a 1/2 inch screw here. This is a number 6, and it's got a cone head. And I'm going to drill those into the top to help lock this onto the base. So I'll go ahead and put some epoxy down now. I've got the raised part up. I'm just going to put some glue around the top of it. Go ahead and put that in. With these screws being as small as they are, I'm not really worried that much about doing a pilot hole. I think I should be okay here, but you can do one if you want. Now that this is cured, you're going to want to use a nipple that will attach to the underside here. Now this is probably a 3-inch nipple. I will say that these are not meant to go on the back side like this, but they will go on. The way that I got mine to thread in, I got it started, grab a pair of vice grips. You only need to turn it a little bit. Because of the thickness of the flange, we need to raise this up so that it's level with the top of our workbench. Otherwise, when we go to use it and we try to sand anything on it, it's going to do this rocking thing, which will drive you crazy. So what we'll do is we'll add some strips to the bottom of this. I cut these thin strips on the table saw. They're a 1/4 inch thick. If you don't have a table saw, or you don't feel like cutting these up on the table saw, you can always buy 1/4 inch strips that will do exactly the same thing. What I'll do is I'm going to come to the edge here. I don't think you have to go all the way to the edge, although you can certainly do that if you want. I'm just going to come to about here, and I'll cut it off. And I'm going to glue it right there. Before I glue it, I'm just going to go across the entire thing and get these cut out. I'll probably go about 1.5 inches, 2 inches maybe. And now I'll just add some glue. I guess you could use a brad nail to nail these on, but I'm not going to do that. The first thing that I'm going to do, which is what I should have done earlier, is to go ahead and remove the nipple again. Now I'll just come in here and lightly push the wood strips down. I'll go ahead and put my glue mat down. I'll go ahead and make sure that these are all pushed down, and I'm hoping I can just flip it. There we go. With this side down, I'm going to put some weight on top, and then I'll let it dry and we'll go from there. Normally I can just throw some concrete blocks that I have outside on the top, but it's pouring down rain right now, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to put my Hello mat on top, and I'm going to grab some diesel containers because that's what I've got in my garage that has weight. Please don't go out and buy diesel containers so that you can do this. Again, use whatever weight that you've got. This works really good for right now. I'll come back when it's dry and take it all off. Now that these are dry, we'll go ahead and add the 3-inch nipple on the back again. And there we go. It'll fit inside of a 3/4 inch dog hole. Or if you don't have any dog holes, it'll fit inside your clamp. When it's time to shift things around, you just spin the disc. Thank you for watching. Let me know if this is something that you might do in the future.